Let me go to YouTube. Yeah, we are live on YouTube. After
Sweet.
I don't know the adjective to use to describe this game. It was an exciting game, but it didn't end in the favor of the Huskies. 89-75 loss to St. John's. We're not going to start yet. We're going to let people file in as always, but I guess while people are filing in, you guys,
I don't even I don't even see us up yet.
it says live.
It still says waiting, like 4 minutes.
Maybe we're
And
not
as
live.
always, but I
Oh,
guess
there
while
we go.
people are
We're up.
filing in,
Oh, we
you
are live.
guys,
Okay. So, as I was saying, do you guys got any just initial thoughts to share as the people file in?
It was good to see AK kind of get back. His arm was taped up. I mean, I feel like that was kind of the assumption now that he had some lingering issue there with his arm. I'm not sure exactly what it is. Nobody has said anything about it. I'm sure that's just to kind of protect him coming up on the NBA draft here, but it was nice to see him kind of step back up. I mean, if there's
Now
anything
that
like positive to
yeah,
take away from that, I feel like that would definitely be it, that we have a more healthy, ready caravan for the future.
Yeah, it's just the way St. John's played in that first half. They hit eight threes, which is something they don't do. They didn't do in the first game. You're down 18 at halftime. That's hard to overcome. They got it to nine was the lowest I think, but I mean we definitely showed some signs of promise in that second half. They could have easily rolled over, which in a way they did. After they got it to nine, it was back to 19 pretty quickly. But there's definitely
I,
positives to take from this game.
I noticed that the run kind of started when we kind of started pressing, applying pressure. Haas forced a few turnovers. I'm not sure why we haven't gone to that in the first half at all. I don't understand whether that's like a dire sort of moment thing where Haas becomes more aggressive defensively, trapping and double teaming, and we force some turnovers. It doesn't really make much sense to me. Why wait until you're down 15 to do that? I mean, if you do that early, first 5, 10 minutes, I mean, you could build a little lead. It would have been really nice to kind of get ahead here. It never really happened, but um, I mean,
um,
it wasn't a total disaster this game. I feel like a lot of fans probably expected this. I was a little more optimistic, but I mean, you can't win them all.
just didn't put it together ever really. And I feel like that's been the thing with this team all year is that they have the good players, the talented players, they just haven't been able to really put it together in order to win basketball games. And that happens to teams. Not every team is going to mesh perfectly. I feel like our last two teams are kind of an anomaly because teams that are full of transfers aren't really supposed to be like, especially the 22-23 team. Like that team was not supposed to be like that, I don't think, and it was just very rare for that to happen. But in this day and age of college basketball, it's very hard for transfers and freshmen, and then whatever you got for returning players to mesh into a winning team. That's why this sport is kind of in a dark place because you've seen it even in the trivia we play. There was no red shirts back when we were in the old Big East and we were playing guys 3 or 4 years. That's why those teams were so good and won together was because they were with each other for years before. And I don't know. I just feel like I'm obviously not blaming the fact that this year's team is not as good as past teams on it, but I mean, I feel like the state of college basketball is kind of a little bit of a disaster.
You bring up that team from 2 years ago, that sort of anomaly. I definitely agree with that. I mean, you only had two freshmen coming in, and the rest were transfers. And I mean, I'm not sure you exactly knew what you were going to get, but I mean, you got a All-American player in Tristan Newton that you weren't sure about, and then you got Donovan Clingan, who was much better than I feel like anyone even from Connecticut expected. He was a highly ranked recruit, but at the same time, I mean, I don't think anybody expected him to be a top 5 pick and top 10 pick in the NBA draft. You got AK in, who changed the program, no doubt, but I just don't think you have those kind of game changers this year. I think you have kind of exactly what you expected. I think that you have a talented roster. I think that Hurley's done a decent job with it. I'm not saying that we stink or anything, but we don't have those those game changers. We have Liam, we have AK, and we have Solo. Those are really the three guys that are gonna change the game for you. And what was Liam, 2 of 13 tonight? I mean, you're not really gonna win many games when that's the case. So um, you got to just kind of keep moving, but understand kind of what you have here and try and make a push here in the tournament.
Yeah, and we now are up to a few more people here. So you guys, as always, feel free to leave some comments. We'll address them, talk about them. But I agree. I mean, Liam, 2 for 13. He didn't have his best shooting night from the field. He got to the foul line. He hit 10 free throws, so he's still getting his portion of the points there. But I'm just gonna go back to my earlier point where you can't have a first half where you go down as many as I think it was only 18 in the first half. It got to 22 in the second half. That just can't happen against a team that as talented as St. John's. I gave them their flowers when we talked about our home loss to them. They're a very good, complete team. They have always five guys that can do something on the floor against you, which unfortunately I feel like more often than not we don't have. And Matt, to your earlier point about why don't we press earlier when we're not down 15, Hurley doesn't trust the bodies. I mean, if we're playing pretty much seven guys, if we press early on, that's more energy. And he's clearly like we have a injured Diarra. We have I don't even know. It's just if he trusted Ross and Mahaney and Noel's in that fold now more to play more minutes, we could press a little more. But it's just not really doable when you don't
You're
have.
not getting anything out of them. That's why when they go in, like the past couple, like I hate. There's nothing that I hate more than like I don't want to say like trashing on a player, but like I've tried to be confident about like some of you guys may or may not know. I was a big time supporter of Jalen Gaffney all throughout his career. When pretty much every Husky fan said that he sucked, I was a huge supporter of him. I thought that he was great for the role that he was in, and I've tried to be as you know what's the word positive as I can about these guys, but they just don't really bring much when they're out there. Noel, you see all this stuff online about him wanting to get into the game, and he gets in and he doesn't change the game at all. And it's the same thing, not the complaining online, but Ross and Mahaney, they don't really bring much when they're out there either. So it's hard to run a team with six guys when the three bench guys you have just don't really bring much every single game.
Yeah, and I feel like we're past the point where those guys are going to make much of an impact. But I said this in our last episode, the preview, or it was maybe the Villanova game, one of our last two episodes. You need those guys. You need at least one of them to step up. I don't remember the last time a team that was essentially 7 deep made any noise in March. I feel like even us last year, we were 8 deep, which in the year before we were 9. I'm not saying we have to get 9 deep like we did 2 years ago, but just we need one of those guys to step up and at least provide something. And that's definitely not the reason this game was lost. So I don't want to start on this whole negative about the bench guys. That's not the reason this game was lost. But it's just such a common theme with this team all year, and I feel like it's just not going to be fixed, and we're just going to have to deal with it. It's just unfortunate in my mind.
I think that St. John's, top to bottom, played a pretty complete game here today. I mean, you're not going to beat them when they're playing like this. They scored 89 points, shot 42% from three. I think it was 50 at halftime. And I mean, when top to bottom, you're just the better team. I mean, all five starters in double figures. Simeon Wilcher off the bench with 7, 3 or 5. I mean, RJ Lewis wasn't exactly himself, still dealing with that injury. Shot 4 of 18, but I mean, everybody else seemed to be hanging around or above that 50% mark. Zuby was a beast. Zuby was a matchup that I feel like we've kind of looked to go at with Terrace and Sampson, but I mean, he kind of made that a non-factor today. He was just an animal, especially on the offensive glass. I mean, St. John's, they're a fantastic team. Can't deny that. I feel like, especially this atmosphere too at the Garden, they kind of, showed up today, for the first time in a few years. So definitely made it a little bit harder. And I think it kind of got in our guys' head. I'm not gonna lie. I think guys like Solo and guys like Liam, I mean, they weren't themselves. They didn't really look like themselves, especially Solo. I mean, he still finished pretty solid, pretty efficient, but I mean, there were just some shots and some like miscues, and you're just like, why are you doing that? And I kind of do contribute it to the atmosphere. I feel like some of these guys aren't aren't exactly, bred for this. Solo, obviously played there last year, but I'm not sure he played much at all. And Liam's just a freshman, so I mean, there still is a lot of building to do and a lot of developing to do for these guys, but we're just getting towards the end of the season here, and it's just not looking like that we're going to become that finished product that we're all hoping for.
Yeah, and I feel like where am I going with this? I just completely forgot my point. That happens sometimes. Anything in the chat? Let me look over.
Yeah, a couple of things from
Couple.
Oliver.
At least we know we aren't a contender. I wasn't totally sure, but we make the tourney and lose in the second round. It's a pretty straightforward situation. We absolutely won't make the Elite Eight. I agree partially with that. I
I
feel
mean,
like
it's
this.
still hard to tell because non-conferences is different than Big East
It's way
conference.
different.
But I do want to say something about St. John's. I've seen a bunch of stuff. I've been on Twitter a little bit since this game, and the UConn fans that are discrediting St. John's, you guys are just stupid. I think, in my opinion, that St. John's is up there with Duke and Auburn for one of the best teams in the country, and that might be foolish to some people to hear. But I mean, you watch the way they play the game; they are a complete team. You want to look for the definition of complete teams? It's Auburn, Duke, and St. John's. St. John's does everything right. They don't really mess up anything in games. They have the ability to come back like they showed us at Gamble. Even what I had said was make them beat you by the three ball. They had more threes in the first half than they had in every single game all season, I feel like, in the first half of this one. So, I mean, they're very good. I think they're Final Four caliber team, and I think Rick Pitino is the coach of the year. I think it's good for the conference that they're good again as well. But I mean, this team, guys, this St. John's team is good. They're nothing to, say, oh, that was a bad loss. They're very good, and I think they're going to move up again, probably to 8 or 7 in the AP poll for this week.
It's very hard for me to kind of not imagine the St. John's team in the Final Four. You look at their roster, their entire starting five is juniors and seniors. They're guys who have been here before, who have played for years, who have experienced so many different things. And I mean, just top to bottom, they're one of the more talented teams in the whole country. Like you mentioned, Duke and Auburn. Duke is filled with freshmen, so I mean, it's going to be much harder for them. But Auburn, St. John's, I mean, that could be a matchup to watch out for later on. But the St. John's team, I mean, it's not to be messed with, man. I don't see them getting upset. I can't see like a worse team beating them. It won't make sense. And I mean, for the Huskies, it's hard. I feel like we've talked about it a lot with, kind of the expectation for this team. I feel like Hurley has gotten a lot out of these guys. And I feel like this season, as much as it kind of sucks, I feel like it could have been way worse. I feel like, Hurley has gotten everything he possibly could out of this team, and I just don't think it's worth it or working. I just don't think this is the team that's going to win you your third straight national championship. I think with what he's had this year and the kind of situation that we're in, where we've had seven guys leave for the NBA in 2 years, I think the fact right now that you're 18-9 and fourth in the conference, I think that's a small victory in a way. You have to kind of look at it in every possible way, but I mean, your starting lineup was your six man last year, Solo Ball, who was like your eighth guy, seventh off the bench, Sampson, who's a career backup, AK, who's your guy and a freshman, and Liam McNeely. And if you told me that this team was at one point ranked and top four in the Big East and looking to make a run to March, I feel like you'd be pretty satisfied with that any other year. But it's just the fact that you're coming off these two great years and you have such high expectations. It's kind of hard to see. But I mean, in a way, I mean, Hurley has definitely learned a lot this year, and I'm really excited to see what he does with this big class coming in next year.
I feel like we'd feel different about how this season has gone if it was, say, 2 years ago after the New Mexico State loss, say the year following that, because we've had all this success, and it's weird to say it's not the end of the world if we don't win a national championship, make a Final Four, but I truly feel like it's not, just based on how amazing this program has been, and I feel like I wouldn't rule it out even as like a 9 seed. UConn is always the program all time that goes against all the expectations or the odds. We were a 7 seed and won the national championship. It's just the seed doesn't matter. I'm really confident in Dan Hurley's ability to coach against non-conference opponents in the NCAA tournament because all we've seen is greatness. Obviously, we've seen greatness with Tristan Newton and Andre Jackson and Jordan Hawkins and Cam Spencer, and the list goes on. All those NBA guys you mentioned, Matt. I don't know if we'll see that again this year because we don't have those guys, but I just hope and I feel like that Hurley's going to have these guys in the best position they can be for the start of the NCAA tournament less than a month from now. But definitely the vibes are lower than I thought they'd be at this point in the year if you were to tell me before the season where we'd be.
And
You know what?
honestly, Matt, you want to go?
I was just gonna make a point at the comment that Oliver made about St. John's. He says they're a top 10 team, not a top 3 team. I mean, if we're gonna kind of keep that energy that the Big East is the best basketball conference in the country, I mean, St. John's is far and away the best team in this conference, in my opinion. And this is the best college basketball on the planet, in my opinion. So, I mean, being the best team in the best conference in the country, I mean, I feel like that kind of gives you that kind of top four esque thing. I mean, look at us. I mean, the past 2 years we've been the best team in this conference, and I mean, look where we've ended up. I really am high on St. John's. So I just kind of wanted to make that clear.
Just want to piggyback off that same comment. We're not trying to bash you, Oliver. It's just a talking point. But you say maybe they make the Final Four at best. How many programs can you truly say that about in the country? It can't be more than like a dozen. I mean, you say we're not. I don't think we're at the level where we're Final Four at best as of right now. I mean, there's a bunch of SEC schools, but I feel like saying that is not a diss in a way. I feel like there's not a lot of teams that can say, "Oh, at best we're a Final Four team." That's winning 4 NCAA tournament games. That's very impressive. But yeah, I agree with you. St. John's is the best team in this conference. And Andrew, I know you had a point, but I just want to get this off because it kind of goes with it. I feel like we really need to try to avoid playing them in the Big East tournament until the title, if possible. That means we get to the title, which also probably won't happen the way we're playing. But we control our own destiny with that because assuming St. John's gets the regular season title, number one seed, if we win out, we get the 3 seed over Marquette, which you say win out. I mean, it's easier said than done, but you can look at who we're playing: Georgetown, at Providence, Marquette, which is the big game that'll determine who gets the 3 seed, who gets the 4 seed, and then end the year against Seton Hall. I feel like that's very doable, even though the team's been in a bit of a funk. I would not be surprised at all if we win all 4 of those games and end up the 3 seed in the Big East, which I feel like at this point needs to be the goal for the Huskies.
I was gonna go off of what Connor said about like the back-to-back championships thing. I think if after you said after that New Mexico State game, if you told me that UConn is gonna win back-to-back national championships, but you're gonna miss the tournament for the next 10 years, I think I would take that because
Yeah.
celebrating back-to-back national championships has only happened 2 other times. So, I feel like the people need to get away from the fact that you need to make the tournament every year. Look at Duke. They've made the tournament every year. Whoop-de-doo, they haven't gotten to the national title game since when? 2015, right? Like, would you take back-to-back championships but miss the tournament the next season, or do you want to keep making the tournament but never get to the national championship game? I think it's personal preference, but the overreactions are pretty insane. Obviously this team isn't the caliber the last team in the year before was. I mean, especially last year's team. How would you not be excited about a team that just steamrolled everybody? I feel like I would take missing the tournament for how many other years after witnessing last year. But winning national championships every year is not the norm in any sport. It's very hard to do, especially back-to-back national championships. And I feel like that's kind of where this whole thing came to bite us was the whole, it's a lot of it's the media and trying to get clicks off the three-peat thing, but three-peat never should have been the complete vision for this team. It should have been baby steps, making it to Maui and winning there, winning your 3 huge non-conference games, and then going into Big East, finishing second, third, or first. The whole three-peat thing all year, I feel like threw everybody off because they felt like if they lost, then it would be the end of the world. So I kind of am all done with the whole three-peat thing because I don't think it's what people should focus on anymore. But yeah, I mean, I'll take this season after winning back-to-back national championships. I have no problem with that.
Here's my thing is I feel like I've been talking about this all year, and it's been met with criticism in the comments section about how Hurley needs to continue to learn and improve. I feel like Obviously Hurley is one of, if not the best coach in the sport of college basketball, but I feel like he kind of gets a pass for these back-to-back national championships, and I feel like the same people that give him a pass are the same people who are just as mad that we are not a top 25 team in the country. I feel like it's one way or the other. I'm not criticizing Hurley at all for this matchup that we just played. I think Hurley, did a good job today. I'm not really mad with it, but I think just all season, he's gotten a pass. You go back to that Villanova game, he kind of got a pass. The whole two rings thing with AK. Um, and I say it, I'm like, you can't continue to be competent with what you've done. I mean, even though it's fantastic, you need to continue to kind of learn and grow. And everybody in the comments would be like, no, like he's the same, keep being himself. But at the same time, I mean, right now we're falling out of March Madness. I mean, we might need an at-large bit at this point, but I feel like those same people are the same ones who are really mad about it. And it's really difficult to kind of be on both sides and play both sides, whether it comes to Hurley or whether it comes to the team, because they're one unit. And I feel like, just kind of keeping that in mind and understanding that, you know, you're gonna stink. You're gonna have a great coach, but I mean, I don't even know how to close this point, to be honest. But these things do go hand in hand. You need your coach to step up, and you need your team to step up. And in order to maintain that success, you need both those things to work in unison.
Yeah. In regards to the tournament, and I don't think that you believe this when you said it. You just mentioned it. I think we're good there. We're gonna unless we lose to either Georgetown at home or Seton Hall at home. I feel like this team is gonna make the NCAA tournament, but that shouldn't be really a cause for concern. It may not be the best seed, but they'll still get in the field. But my last point here, that I do want to talk a little bit more about the actual St. John's game itself, is looking at our roster and the guys that came back. Solo Ball got a lot better. He's one of the more improved players in the Big East. Who else on this team got better among the guys that came back? I mean, Diarra maybe. He just has a larger role. I feel like Caravan, has he gotten better? I mean, he's in a bit of a shooting slump that hopefully he's out of now. But I feel like these guys, like, they expected a big leap from Jalen Stewart, who he has been better, but a big leap, I feel like that's a bit of a stretch. Jaden Ross was called a lottery pick in a practice, and he played 2 minutes in this game, and that's been the common theme pretty much all of Big East play. I just feel like Hurley expected big leaps from these guys, and he didn't get them, and that's part of the reason. And on top of guys like Mahaney not being who you thought they were going to be. Not all the newcomers have been bad. Like, Terrace Reed was awesome today. Terrace Reed had, 15 points. He's been dominating back-to-back double-figure games for him. He has been better than I expected when he got here. McNeely's been almost better than I expected, too. His stats are a little inflated by that 38-point performance, but he's still averaging 15 points per game, which is leading the team. I just feel like you didn't get the jump that you needed from a handful of guys, and if that's not going to happen, you're not going. The other guys like Caravan, Diarra, they're not. I was going to say they're not good enough, but they're not bad players. They're not. I don't even know what I'll say. Not good enough, but I'm not calling them bad. They're not good enough to carry the weight of the guys you expected to produce more, and that's just the makeup of this roster. So it'll look different next year. I'm curious to see what that is, but we're not focusing on next year. We're focusing on the present. We had a game in 3 days against Georgetown. That's almost do or die, I feel like. I know I said we're good for the tournament, but if you lose to Georgetown and have a Seton Hall loss on your resume, it's not looking too great. Looking at the chat. This is a mid-team. It is what it is. Let's just hope we can somehow get to the tournament. I mean, they're going to get to the tournament. I'm not concerned about that.
You're right, though.
I mean,
You're
we
right.
have 5 quad 1 wins. Not really.
You're right about like the lack of improvement. I mean, you got Solo, and then AK's kind of the same, and then McNeely's emergence. Other than that, it's like you mentioned Ross. I feel like he was a big part of this kind of project and plan, but it just hasn't worked out. And I mean, he can't score. He doesn't really do anything with the ball. It's like he's a great defender. I mean, you can't deny that, but offensively, he's just so raw. It's hard to to see him in a long-term role here. And I mean, Stewart, 13 minutes, 0 shots, 4 fouls. It's just it's really hard to see that because I mean, you see it with Stewart. You see like the steps that he has taken and what he could be, and it's really hard to just kind of watch him kind of take a back seat like that and not really be a factor in any of these massive games.
Another comment. I'm just reading it before I say it in case it's bad. Another thing that pissed me off is how damn long this game took. Did someone throw something on the floor and what? I have no idea what that is.
You just
2.5 hour game.
A lot of fouls. I mean, it took like 40 combined free throws. I'm not that fan to make moral victories usually, but if they were to do that, Billy Donovan couldn't, and Hurley would have been. So there's that at the very least. Maybe I'm just not reading that correctly. I don't know what that means.
I don't know. But
Let's talk about the game more. Like I said, I'm pulling up the box.
No, I think we took way too many stupid threes today that just didn't go in. Solo specifically shot a bunch of dumb ones that just didn't go in. It was good to see Caravan make a few, and McNeely was kind of not great today either from 3.
Yeah, McNeely 0 for 6. Caravan was 3 for 6, all 3 coming in the second half. Solo ended 3 for 9. Those are really the only 3 guys we have taking threes.
I don't think that we played that bad. I just think St. John's played really good. We had 18 turnovers. They had 12. It wasn't like last game where it was just a disaster. It's just St. John's came to play today.
They did. I mean, Zuby, 18, 9, and 6 assists from their center. R.J. Lewis, he like you said, he was a little banged up. He still played 37 minutes, did shoot 4 of 18, but he hit 3 threes. That's not his game. He's the mid-range guy. I mean, Aaron Scott can make threes. He went 2 for 6. Smith, 2 for 3 from deep. But, I mean, you could tell that even though they showed some fight in the second half, I mean, there were a couple sequences where, like, this game was over in the first half. Like, the 8-0 run in 3 seconds because one of their guys hit a 3. Sampson had a flagrant foul as the 3 went in, so they hit 2 free throws, and then hit a 3 right away, so 8 points in 3 seconds of game time. And then that last possession of the first half for the Huskies, 0 for 6 from the field in the last possession. It's kind of cool, actually, looking back at it. It doesn't matter the end result of the game because they lost by 14. But just to get all those looks and to see none of them fall, like Solo had the floater. He was like too open and airballed.
It was just
He didn't just miss, he airballed.
He airballed a floater like in the middle of the paint. It was just.
It looks like it slipped out of his hand, kind of.
It's a very weird sequence. I feel like that sequence sums up this game. Just silly stuff, like you said. Credit St. John's, but I don't know. Like some of Sadiku Ibanayo, who is quite a name. He had that one tip in that. Like, did he even touch the ball? I don't know. Like. Stuff like that happened to them. I feel like everything was going their way. It's just credit St. John's. Hopefully we don't see them again this season. If we do, hopefully it's in the Big East Championship game.
Yeah.
Any new comments? There is.
He just said that Billy
Donovan couldn't get to the tournament.
Yeah, St. John's. It came from everywhere today. Davon Smith couldn't miss. Kadari couldn't really miss. You mentioned Zuby, and then Aaron Scott got a little banged up, a little bloody, but I mean he stayed in there. And
how did he was bleeding like the whole time?
Yeah.
And he had blood on his jersey. Well, how do they just let him? Aren't they supposed to like stop play, make him either patch him up? But I thought when you got blood on your jersey, you have to like take it off and get a new jersey. I don't know how that works. I've seen that before, but
it was coming from his mouth.
It was like his lip,
like an open cut.
I'm surprised they just let him roll with it, but that just shows the toughness they got. I don't remember what play he got that on, but I remember he did have a play where he missed a 3 and got his own rebound on a diving loose ball. It's just stuff like that, the little things that I feel like Dan Hurley's teams usually excel in, are just things that this team doesn't have. Like, when we're down, this is different than the little things, but it's something I noticed. Like, when we're down 16 with 8 minutes left, or 18 with 8 minutes left. Tiara, even not pressured, is bringing the ball up slowly. He doesn't have a sense of urgency. And that's just not just him, but Liam, when he got a rebound, he's pushing it down the floor, driving to the hoop, getting fouls. Liam seemed to be the only one that realized they were down by 6 possessions and needed to go quickly. That's just something I noticed. It's just I feel bad for Liam because I said this in a previous episode as well. He didn't come here for this. He came here to be ranked in the top 10, be competing for a third straight national championship for the program. But, I mean, maybe that's just me feeling bad for the kid. I mean, he's still a part of this team. I know he's most likely going to be a one and done, and this is not how he expected, or anyone expected the one to go. But, I mean, he didn't have a great shooting night, but he showed a lot of, what's the word? I was about to say force. That's definitely not the word. A lot of poise, I guess, is the word I was looking for. He got to the free throw line, knocked him down. I mean, he struggled, but without him, I feel like we lose this game by 25.
There was a moment kind of early in the second half too, where I can't remember exactly what happened, but we called a timeout, and Hurley kind of embraced him and was saying something to him, almost sentimentally. I have no idea what he could have been saying, but I mean, part of me thought in my head that it was that he's sorry. He was sorry for how this is going, because I mean, it really looks like Liam's out there, wanting to win. It seems like Hurley really cares about him as kind of more than a player, almost like a son in a way. But it's difficult. I don't know. Just I'm curious about what he was saying in that little embrace.
We have the annual Rick Pitino. We're going to play next year's game at Carneseca Arena, quote.
Oh, boy.
Good luck with that.
Been 3 years now.
Quotes are starting to come out. I'm just reading through. Hurley. This was the first time since Maui where the wheels came off. This year, most of our losses were excruciating losses. I agree with. I feel like we're always in it, win or lose. This one, I don't remember the last time we subbed in guys like Noel and Ross. They came back in the game. I don't remember the last time we did that in a loss. I feel like we're always fighting until the end, but it got to 19, and that was it.
Yeah. I mean, Seton Hall. I don't think you can lose that game without the wheels falling off. To be entirely honest.
That's true.
The whole game, the wheels were off. We just drove that car without wheels.
Oh, boy. Here's a stat. St. John's starters just became, this is from the Field of 68, by the way. St. John's starters just became the first starting five to each record 12 points, a steal, and a block in a D1 game the last 15 years. Jesus. Dewey at 18, 9, and 6 with 2 steals and 3 blocks. Kadari 18, 3, and 4 with 2 and 2. Smith 12, 7, 8, 1 and 1. And then Scott 13, 8, 2, 3 and 2. And then Lewis 14, 5, 0, 2 and 1. So, I mean, that's a complete team, man. That's a great stat line for a starting five, and that's just a complete team for college basketball.
Defense first. That's what you got to be. Unless you have a very explosive offense, like there are teams like Alabama who if they score 110, they'll give up 100. Teams like that, but most of the good teams, they're a defensive first oriented team.
Honestly, after Maui, that's what I kind of was hoping this team would do. Is if they can't fix the defense, they can at least be like that. But their offense isn't good enough to keep up with how bad their defense is. That's also why we don't win any games, because the offense is just simply not good enough to keep up with how bad our defense is, and it just sucks to see.
Let's see.
I mean, this game was just so different from the first one. I don't understand. The first game, there was 120-something combined points.
Yeah. It's just, that's what happens when they hit all those threes early. They had what? They hit 50 in the first half, I'm pretty sure. I forgot the exact.
They were 8 of 16. I don't think they made one in the second half, to be honest.
They had 8, so I'll check the box. No, they only took 3. They were 8 for 16 at halftime, 0 for 3 in the second half. And they didn't need it, which is crazy. It just shows how many ways they can beat you. They didn't need to take 16 threes in the second half, and they were still able to win, even though they got outscored by 4. UConn outscored St. John's by 4. It's just, they didn't need to attack from three. It's just I feel like one of you guys said this earlier. Just plays that made you like scratch your head. I feel like we saw more of those in this game. Like Diarra had a steal off an inbound. Do you guys remember that? Like right after we hit a bucket, he stole the ball, and then he just went right into a guy taller than him and got blocked. Like you steal the ball, you have momentum. Why don't you take it out and just run another offensive set? It's just silly things like that. I feel like okay, you did one thing positive, but you immediately followed up with something dumb. Like
Shortly after that, AK walked down the court and shot it from the S in St. John's.
yeah,
Just braked it. Like,
That's
what are
been
you
the
doing?
that's been the story of this team. Is for every good thing they do, they just follow it with something equally bad.
Yeah,
And
it's ridiculous.
especially Diarra. I mean, he'll like it's why it's so hard to have an opinion on because like he'll have these like great assists and then he'll do something like that where he just goes into someone who really didn't even have to move and just kind of put their arm up. It's just like it. I've never watched a player that's made me out loud say, "What are you doing?" than Hassan Diarra. I've never watched one other player that's made me say that out loud than him.
I have. His name's Andre Jackson, but that's a little
Well,
different
yeah,
because
okay.
he's a
That's
starter on one of
yeah.
the. He's a starter on one of the best teams in the NBA, and love Hassan Diarra. Don't think he's gonna reach that peak in his basketball career. So yeah, it's just you said you haven't heard of one. I could think of one. He'd block a shot and then pass the ball into the upper deck of Gamble on a fast break. But
He was fun. He was a fun guy to
There are
watch.
times where I thought he was being controlled by like like how you have like a stick with a string. I
yeah,
thought that's how
like
he
a
was being
puppet.
controlled because that's how out of control he was sometimes.
He's too fast and too big for his own good.
What
But
else?
Haas is just, well, I mean, if you look at it, who was Haas under his first year here, right?
Learn from the best. Um, what else haven't we really touched upon? I mean, Caravan. Hopefully he's back. I mean, we talked about that, but I don't think we went full in depth. He did have 6 turnovers. He didn't that first half. He looked ugly. It was bad. Every time he touched the ball, I feel like he lost it and turned it over. Didn't make a three. Only had 2 points in the first half. He missed a couple of those 0 for 6 on the last possession. But he really stepped it up in the second half. Defensively, he had 2 blocks as well. So he has been a lot better defensively than I feel like people give him credit for. I mean, his blocks per game is a bit inflated because he had the early stretch in the year where he had 7 on opening night and he had another 4 or 5 shortly after that. But hopefully he unlocked something. I mean, he's had games where he's been all right, but I crunched the numbers since Maui when he hit his head at the end of that Dayton game and had a concussion. Since that game, and I'm not counting that game because that was at the very end of the game. I don't think he took another shot after that. He's 27 of 98 from 3. That was going into halftime today. So do the math. He's 30 for 103 from 3 since hitting his head, which maybe that's a coincidence. Maybe I don't want to assume anything. But I just feel like it's so weird for him to be in this slump. Hopefully he's figured it out. I mean, the shooting percentage is worse from the time he rolled his ankle in that Creighton game. It's just the health stuff. I feel like you mentioned, Matt, you saw he had that thing on his shoulder today, which I didn't know he had anything wrong with his shoulder. Maybe there's stuff behind the scenes we don't know, but I'm just going to leave it at hopefully Caravan unlocks something and can at least knock down a couple threes a game the rest of the way because we need it.
It's my guess. I mean, I'm guessing that there's something wrong with his arm that just isn't being broadcasted, which I think is a bold move. I mean, I don't think that helps or hurts your case to go in the first round here. I feel like if you made it more obvious that, I mean, maybe it's lingering. Maybe it's something they don't want people to know about. Who knows? But I mean, just seeing a few go in for him today, it has to help. I mean, at the very worst, he's seen it. I've seen the ball go in a couple times, which can't be said for the past few months at this point. So, just baby steps. I mean, he's a fantastic player. We all know that. It's just kind of getting back to that point where you're a top 10 player in the country.
And you guys can feel free to continue to comment stuff in the chat. I feel like we're winding down here. Not our longest live stream, but I feel like not much to say, even though there's probably a lot to say. It's just this is a game the better team won, and I feel like sometimes that's not the case with our games, but today it was. We'll go for a few more minutes here. See if you guys have any comments in the chat. Um,
I mean,
Next
yeah,
game is
guys.
Georgetown.
Just like one more point in this game, I feel like guys that you've kind of expected to be your guys are just not, and it's impossible to be a top 25 team when you have such high expectations for certain people and it just doesn't work out. Like Mahaney, like he's supposed to be playing 20, 30 minutes a game, in my opinion. Like that was the expectation coming into the season. He played four tonight. Ross Hurley was saying was above Stewart and an NBA lottery pick, and he played 2 minutes. I mean, even Stewart played 13. You have six guys making an impact, and that's just it's hard to imagine a team like with six guys making a deep run.
Have to agree with you there.
I don't know. I don't think it's over yet, but it's definitely trending the wrong way. I feel like there's still a lot you can be positive in terms of the season. And it's our track record with non-conference. Obviously, Maui's different, but I think the Big East is definitely one of the best college basketball conferences this year, and it's really showing. So you could have the the whole story with that, but I just feel like we got to get ourselves out of the 8-9 hole because I mean you don't want to play a one the second weekend. So I feel like you get yourself to around a 7 or 6, or maybe even up to a 5 if you can. I feel like that'd be a much better position than an 8-9 because an 8-9 is kind of just a recipe for death because you already have to play a team that's within one seed of you, whether you are the 8 or the 9. And then you got to follow that up with playing a 1 seed, which is going to be one of Duke, Auburn, maybe Houston and Alabama, I think, are the four that I would probably.
Florida's in there too, but
Florida
definitely,
too, yeah. But
yeah.
like you don't want to play the 1 seed that early. It could work in your favor, like it did for Arkansas, who ended up getting blown out by us after beating Kansas. But I just feel like you want to get yourself away from that 8-9 and just at least to a 7, at least. And I feel like a lot of that would come from a good performance in the tournament, even if we make it to the final and get hammered by St. John's. I haven't necessarily been impressed with Creighton or Marquette this year. The only real Big East team I've been completely impressed by is St. John's. So I feel like that if you're in the opposite side of the bracket to them, you can make the championship game. And even if they just win it right out, they're the best team in the conference. So I just feel like making the Big East championship game would do wonders in terms of our seeding for this tournament.
Yeah, you got to think with this current group. Obviously, last year Jalen Stewart had played some of his best basketball in the Big East tournament and helped us win the title. But the only other time this team has played consecutive days, they lost every game. So I just can they make it run in the Big East tournament? Yes, definitely. But I don't know. I'm just not the most confident that will happen. I agree. We definitely want to try to get off that 8-9 line. I feel like at this point, depending on how we finish, it's weird to say, we almost might go backwards to a 10. I mean, say if we think we beat Marquette at home, that's easily a game we could lose. We lose that one, and we lose another in the Big East tournament. We have 11 losses next to 21, 22 wins, which that's probably going to put us in the 8-9 range. But I feel like we have to almost win the Big East tournament to get higher than a 7, and higher than a 7 would be maybe sneaking into a 6. It's just it's stuff you don't have to worry about. I feel like because at the end of the day, we can talk all we want about what seed you get, but it doesn't matter. All that matters is you beat the team in front of you. Even it sucks if it's Duke in game 2, as opposed to not seeing Duke till like a Final Four. But I don't know. I'm still reiterating my point. I'm confident in this group in an NCAA tournament setting, just based on what Hurley and the staff have done.
And then the Big East. I mean, I guess other than St. John's now, these are all home games. So I mean, you take Hall or not Hall, Creighton and Marquette. At the Garden, I feel like that's a much different atmosphere than playing at them, or I mean, even at Gamble, it's different. It's just not the same. And I mean, even today, there were moments when you thought that this team was going to kind of work back into this game, but St. John's was just too good. I mean, you need to catch them on an off night. But I mean, you get them one more time, you never know. It could be third time's a charm. But I mean, I feel like you win a couple games there at MSG in the Big East, and I think ch things kind of change. You could win out here. You could go these last four, 4-0, and then you go into the Big East. I mean, you could win one or two, that's six, and then hopefully at that point you're ready to kind of take on St. John's there.
It's hard to beat a team 3 times in one season. Not saying we will beat St. John's if we see them again, but that's just always an old saying. I'm not seeing any more comments rolling, so I think we'll kind of wrap up this live stream. The next game for the Huskies is, like I said, an important game because they're all important the rest of the way against Georgetown, a banged up Hoya squad who I believe is playing Creighton either right now or pretty soon. So it's interesting to see how that goes. I know Sorber, I don't think he's playing today. He's been pretty banged up, and they've been struggling without him. But yeah, that'll be our next game. We'll most likely get a preview out of that one before then, later this week, maybe even the day of the game. But yeah, you guys, any last thoughts on this live stream?
Sucks to lose, but we lost to a great team.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we got to get better if we want a shot at this tournament.
Yeah, it's like you said, great team. A game that we had confidence going in because MSG, we're UConn. We won what 8 or 9 in a row going in at MSG. I believe I saw the stat was 8 in a row at MSG, 10 in a row in New York City, and 12 in a row in the state of New York. Obviously, that's all gone now, but it just shows this team's gonna be okay. They got to figure some stuff out, and they're running out of time to do it. But they still have a little bit more time. But yeah, that'll do it here for this live stream. Probably our last live stream of the season, at least a post game live stream of the season. We went 1-2. We got to win. I'll take the win. Win at Creighton. Usually these live streams are after losses, but 1-2 I feel like isn't too bad. But yeah, that's it. Thank you guys for tuning in. I think it's over.
That was super glum.